I walk into the room, and Eva's sitting in her chair, her favorite chair. And Eva's a delightful 80-year-old woman, really deep wrinkles. She wears glasses, has this beautiful snow kind of gray hair. And she uses a cane. The cane she uses is because of an earlier accident, a car accident, a really bad car accident. Broke both of her hips, broke a leg, and the heel. She has a lot of arthritis due to the accident, and she uses a cane. The cane's sitting next to her favorite chair. She also uses these shoes, which some of you may be familiar with. They're not very pretty, but they are practical. It's these shoes that Eva is pointing at while looking at me, and she says, "I ain't wearing those fucking shoes." Now, it doesn't take a lot of clinical expertise to realize Eva's pissed. Eva's upset. But I naively kind of bumbled into the conversation, and I said, "But Eva, the shoes, they work." "They don't work. They will get you to point A to B." Eva takes her glasses, brings them down. I know I'm going to get ready to be schooled. This woman's getting ready to lecture me. She says, "You have no clue about shoes. You don't understand them. Those shoes will get me from point A to B. But these," and she pulls out this bright red heel, like 5 inches, very impractical. "These will get a woman noticed going from point A to point B." Sensing that I had kind of missed the conversation and maybe not really heard Eva, maybe not seen her, I sat down and I asked Eva, "Tell me about the shoes." Eva points to a photo on her wall, and she gets this look about her. I can see that she's transported to a different time. And she looked at me, she says, "I wasn't always an old woman." She says, "In fact," this podium's a little bit in my way. She said, "In fact, these legs," and she kind of caressed her calf, "these legs used to get the boys to turn around and take notice." We kind of chuckled. And that afternoon, I had a delightful conversation with Eva. Not about shoes, but about the importance of feeling beautiful, the importance of feeling valued and worthy, the importance of being seen. I'm curious how many of us in this room, maybe unknowingly, dismiss, don't see our clients. I'm talking about the totality of who they are. Not just the illness, not just the problem, the totality of who they are. Are they allowed to bring that entire totality of who they are into the room? It's one of the primary things I try to tell my students is to see your clients, to see all of them. How many of us put up roadblocks, perhaps unknowingly, because of our own stuff and keeping the idea of sexual wellness from being a safe conversation in the room? So let's talk about a couple of possible roadblocks that maybe some of us in this room might be familiar with. Our own baggage. That's a clinical term, baggage. Some of us have so much baggage regarding sex, we have a lifetime of it. Sexual myths, shame, guilt, sex negativity, from our family, from our culture, from our religious organizations. We have so much of it. In fact, we've decided to carry it around. We bought designer luggage and put it on wheels and carry it with us everywhere. How many of us have that baggage that maybe keeps us from seeing clients? The totality of who they are, all of who they want us to see. Number two, a roadblock can be this idea or this notion of goal-oriented sex and sexuality versus pleasure-centered sex. Do you have if you haven't figured this out, I am originally from the US and I'm American. But do you have the saying, first base, second base, third base? Yeah, okay. And that saying, that idea, that model is so ingrained in many of our understandings of sexuality that we bring that in. We bring that in culturally to our conversations with our clients. We privilege penetrative intercourse. And if we are starting from that place, we may unknowingly be dismissing other activities that people enjoy. And so again, I ask my students, ask yourself, is that how you personally see sexuality? Do you see that the end-all, be-all goal is an orgasm after rounding the three bases? Is that what sex is supposed to be? Because if that's how you view it, if you've been exposed to this model, you may enter conversations that way. Sex should always be about pleasure. Third, how many of us potentially leave marginalized groups out of the conversation? How many of us think that sex and the people who get to be sexual are of a certain look, of a certain cohort? Sometimes we leave commercial, the unattractive people who don't rise up to the commercial standard of beauty. We leave them out of that conversation. We leave the disabled. We leave the LGBTQ community and the older community out of this notion that they have a right. They have a right to own sexual pleasure. I often share with my students that instead of looking at clients and thinking, well, they may be sexual, replace it with the idea that this is a cradle to grave issue, and by default, they are sexual. Also, be aware if you're bringing to the conversation a narrow definition of what sex or sexuality is. Recognize that your clients bring their own views of what that is, and your job is to figure out what that umbrella looks like. And to see all the richness, all the diversity, all the ways that they are bringing that conversation into the clinical moment. So, a few tips, very quickly. What can you do to perhaps counter sexual roadblocks? Is ask yourself, are you askable? More importantly, does your client see you as askable? How will they know that you're safe? I'm looking right at you too. How do they know you are safe? That they can bring who they are as a sexual person into the clinical conversation. Sometimes they feel rushed, there's not very much time. They don't know you too well. This is a really hard conversation. It's embarrassing. How do they know if you are askable? Do you center client sexuality within the clinical conversation? You can't work with the goldfish if you don't acknowledge the water and the fishbowl that they're in. It's impossible. It's that important. And does that mean I'm done? Thank you. Woo. All right. So, we're sprinting forward very quickly. And again, I'm from the US. We talk slow. I'm from the South, it's really easy to dismiss older women and their sexuality. It's really easy not to see them as sexually vibrant, erotic potential. And my students will sometimes say, Dr. Turner, we can't have that conversation with that woman. She's too frail. She's too old. She's from a different generation. She's too conservative. And I'm like, really? That may be for some women, but you have to remember, this cohort of women brought us the miniskirt. This cohort of women were burning their bras in the 60s. This cohort of women initiated the sexual revolution. Tina Turner belongs to this generation. Helen Mirren, Cher. These women own their sexuality. They own it. And we as health professionals have a right, have a responsibility to honor that piece of who they are. That piece of who they are. Remember, just like shoes, sexuality is not a mundane getting from point A to B. It's about being alive, being authentic, connected, whole. It's about being seen. Thank you.